All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the live broadcast of Ryan Thorpe's fastest known time of the Catskills 100. My name is Kim Levinsky, owner and race director for Sasquatch Trail Running. If you're new here, we put on trail parties, is what we call them. Our trail races are all throughout northern New Jersey and the Hudson Highlands of New York. So tonight we are joined by the one and only Ryan Thorpe.
Hey, Kim. Thanks for having me on.
What's up, Ryan?
Hey, I'm doing well. How are you?
Good, good. We had a slight baby delay, but so apologize we're a little bit late, but the VIP Emily, she had to go down, so a little bit late, but that's all right.
It's appropriate that she threw a wrench into the beginning of the podcast about this with how the FKT went down.
Yes, I cannot wait to get all the details of the FKT. I think it's important to first start out. Maybe if you could do like an elevator pitch of Ryan Thorpe, who you are, and then we
Oh,
can jump into the FKT. So who's Ryan
okay.
Thorpe?
I'm a New Jersey-based ultra runner, so I guess you could say I live in the flatlands, but I almost exclusively run big mountain races these days, and I've managed to finish some pretty cool races all over the U.S. and I have a couple FKTs under my belt now, and this is one that I'm particularly proud of.
Now, Ryan, you didn't mention anything about the eggnog slog.
Oh, and I should have said my proudest achievement is I am a multi-time champion of the eggnog slog, eggnog mile that Kim puts on, where we drink. Is it 8 ounces of eggnog every quarter
Mm,
mile?
yeah,
And,
it's really gross.
it's just as gross as it sounds.
Yes, you are the reigning. You took the title this year, didn't you? Right?
No, Ben beat me
Oh,
again.
Ben. That's right.
Yeah, I got to start doing some speed work because yeah, he's got my
Mhm.
number at this event now.
Yeah, he transitioned from the non dairy category to full dairy this year to take you on.
I really thought I was going to take him with the playing field leveled a little bit, but he stepped up his game and beat me by a full minute. So I've got some work to do this year.
I think my favorite moment was Emily at the finish line when you were like, man, this must be your proudest moment of your old man. And she just, I don't know if she cried or like she wasn't impressed at all.
Could not care less.
All right. Well, let's hop into the FKT. Well, right off the bat, we got Sarah Kool-Aid is listing your blog spot. So if anyone wants to learn more about Ryan's got some really great race recaps. You can check it out on the ryruns.blogspot.com. There's some really good write-ups on there. But let's jump into the FKT. There's a lot of history with this one. You and this FKT go back a few years. So
Hmm.
let's first define what the route is, and then we can go into that history. So why don't you fill everybody in? What is the Catskills 100?
So the route, as I did it, is a 90-ish mile point to point route from the northern boundary of Catskill Park to the southern boundary, following the long path. So all mileage that you're intimately familiar with after your your full traverse of the long path. Um, but this is probably my favorite section of it because it hits all the highest points of the long path. It hits the highest point in the Catskills. I think it does 9 high peaks and touches a bunch of other fairly high points along the way. And it's got something like 25,000 feet of elevation gain. So it's a pretty burly route and classic uh, Catskills terrain, lots of rock hopping and scrambling.
Yeah, there's really not any easy section of the 90 miles, I don't think. One
No,
compared.
there's a nice descent from North South Lake to Palinville. I think you
Yeah.
get 4 miles of pretty runnable terrain.
Yep.
And other than that, it's pretty relentless.
And maybe, you know what? Maybe that road section that connects Palinville to the base of Catskill, that's kind of nice. If you don't get hit by a car from the
Yeah, that's true.
trailhead.
Actually, there's probably like a mile of decent road running there, as long as you don't
Yes.
get hit by a car.
Yes. Yes. Well, I think it would be cool to provide a little context on this FKT because there is you have updated the route now in 2025. So give us a little backstory on how that came to be and why did you decide to extend it to what it is right now?
Sure. So I did the Manitou's Revenge race a bunch of times, and after 1 year, someone was telling me, this was originally supposed to be a 100-mile race. So if anyone doesn't know, Manitou's Revenge is a 54, I think these days 51-mile race, something like that, along the long path in the Catskills, and it's basically the first chunk of what I did. But I guess Charlie, who created the event, wanted it to be a 100-miler, and he didn't really know the area that well. He just kind of like put it together on a map, and he started showing it to people. And I guess the overwhelming response he got was, "Do you want people to finish it?" And he's like, "Well, yeah, of course." And he said, "Well, then don't make it a 100-mile race. It's got to be something like a 50, and it's still a really difficult 50." So I found out all of that, and I said, "Well, now that I've done the 50 a few times, I have to see what the 100 is like." And so I asked Mike Sudi for who was the co-director of the race back then, for the GPX file, and he got that out to me, and we talked a little bit about what it would be like to put all those sections together. So that was all back in 2019 or 2020.
Yeah.
I think 2019 is when I first started planning it, but I could never figure out the right time to do it. And then 2020, with all the races being canceled, that was the first time that I gave it a shot. So I went up and attempted it on the weekend of the usual Manitou's Revenge, and hilarity did not ensue. How much you want to talk about previous ill-fated attempts on this?
Yeah, I think it's important because there's a lot that went into your finish. Like you and the long path section go way back. So
Yeah. So
uh, yeah,
so
tell us about it.
it took me 3 attempts to finish this thing. So the first year in 2020, it was brutally hot for the first 50K. So from the start to Palinville, and then so I did this with Devang Patel, who some of your listeners might know.
Yeah.
And then as we were climbing up Catskill, the skies opened up and unleashed this torrent of rain on us for the next 6 hours or so.
Oh,
So we got just doused coming over Catskill High Peak, which felt good for a little bit. And Catskill is always muddy, so it was like, all right, well, it might as well rain on us here. But then it continued to rain as we were going through the Devil's Path, where the footing is pretty crucial and the rocks get really slick. And by the time I guess a little bit after sunset, it had been wet for, I don't know, 10 hours straight. And I think it stopped raining overnight, but it was like the ground was so wet, and all the brush and stuff around the trail was wet. So like every step I was either going into mud or I was brushing up against wet leaves. And so my feet were just wet the entire time. I kept changing socks and they would just immediately soak through again. So my feet just got absolutely destroyed overnight. I remember my legs still felt good, and I was going down the hills walking because I just couldn't bear the weight of running on
yeah.
my feet. They looked like hamburger meat at the end.
Oh man.
So I got to within 10 miles of where I wanted to define the finish line. And Alex met me there, my wife, and I was like, "Hey, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. I hate it. I don't." And I told her I never want to try this route again because it destroyed me so badly. And then within a span of 5 minutes, I was like, "But if I were to try it again,
Oh, there it is.
I would do." Yeah. So I didn't even make it to like the next day, like a typical ultra runner. It was like, I hate this, never doing it again. But I think I could probably do it if I tweaked a few things.
Yes.
Um,
So that was 2020, right?
yeah,
The first attempt, and then the next one. It was last year, right? It was last summer.
it was 2 years ago. It
2
was
years, 23.
Yeah, it was the
Yeah.
last thing I did before our daughter was born. It
Yes.
ended up being a week before she was born because she came early. I thought it was going to be a month before. So I was like, yeah, one last hurrah. It was August. It was an 80-degree sunny day, which, sounds really nice, but it was an 80-degree Catskills day. So like 99% humidity.
Yeah.
And I didn't even make it through the Manitou's Revenge 50 course. I made it 40 miles in. I was chafing. I was dehydrated. I was like, this is dumb. I was well behind the pace that I had done the previous time.
Yeah.
Well, I have no interest in walking for another 30 hours or whatever it's going to take me. So the course defeated me again.
And then now you're
Yeah.
here, 2025.
So
So
I had done it in June and I had done it
yeah.
in August. And I was like, well, I like running in cold weather. Maybe I need to do it in April when
Yeah.
it's nice and chilly still. And the short story is it worked out, but but April has its own set of drawbacks.
Yes, that was a big challenge of your attempt because I'll let you tell the story, but something happened a week before FKT.
Yeah. So I was on the fence about whether I was going to try it this spring. It seems like every spring I look at doing this route and it's like, it's too wet. It's like 3 springs in a row we've had the wettest spring on record. So it hasn't made sense to try this route, which is always wet anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But this year it was like the stars were aligning, the snow was melting off all the high peaks, and the weather was still cool and it wasn't raining. And I was like, wow, this is it. This is my attempt. And, we had a weekend where our whole family could go up to the Catskills for a couple of days. And I managed to find you and a few other people to come out and help. And I booked a non-refundable Airbnb. And as soon as I hit submit on that, I saw the weather report for the day that I had chosen. And no, this was a few weeks ahead, I guess. So I saw the weather report for 1 week out from
Yeah.
my attempt and saw that the high peaks were going to get 12 inches of snow.
Yeah. So let's talk about that and what impact it had on your FKT because that's not a small amount of snow to get.
Yeah. So a lot of it did melt off, but crucially, not all of it. And a lot of it just solidified into ice in the high peaks. So I got my first taste of it along the escarpment trail. There was this section where I was just post-holing into like 6 inches of mashed potatoes.
Oh my God.
And that was right after Dutcher's Notch. So right after the spot where you crewed for me.
Yeah.
And because until I got to you, everything was smooth sailing. And then I was like, well, this should be a piece of cake until we see each other again. And then just pretty much immediately was going in up to my shins in snow.
Oh my God.
And just like, it wasn't firm enough where I could put on spikes to be helpful. It was just like this sloppy mess. And it was only a few miles of that. So it probably just added a few minutes, but it was like, I'm only at 3,000 feet now. I have to go up to 3,500, 4,000 feet a bunch of times before this is over. So I'm pretty sure this is going to get worse before it gets better. And that was pretty much the case.
Yeah.
Every time I got up near that 3,500 foot mark, it was a little treacherous.
So I know you brought your spikes with you. How often did you end up having to use them throughout the
So early on, I only had to put them on going up Blackhead Peak, which is 3,900 feet. And that's a peak that's just always icy, and the ice really stuck around late this year. So up until that point, I had been like sidestepping the ice or grabbing onto a tree or whatever I needed to do. But that was the part where it was like a sheet of ice at a 30% grade, and like one wrong step and you're going to break a leg. So I was like, okay, I'm going to be intelligent about this and actually take a minute to put on my spikes like a smart human being.
Yes.
So that from there until Platte Clove, which is almost but not quite the halfway point, I didn't really have to use them at all. Just, had to tiptoe through some patches of snow here and there. But then going through the Devil's Path, it's, 4 high peaks? So Indian Head, Twin, Sugarloaf, and Plateau. all
Yep.
in a span of 7 miles. So you go up to 3,500 feet or higher, 4 times in 7 miles. Um, every one of those peaks was just like caked in snow, and Plateau was the worst. Actually, I shouldn't say it was the worst. It had the deepest amount of snow. There was probably 18 inches of snow at the top of Plateau.
Are you serious?
Yeah, but thankfully it stayed so cold up there that it was actually firm, and I was hitting it pretty late in the day, so I think it had sort of re-solidified. So I was able to sort of float on top of that snow. It wasn't too bad, but there
Okay.
was a lot of putting on spikes, taking off spikes, putting them on, taking them off, trying to step around these little patches of ice on the rocky parts because spikes don't really bite into rock that well.
Yeah.
So like if I put them on, I'm gonna grip the ice better, but I also might like slip and die just on a rocky section now.
Oh my God.
So, so I was, yeah, after thinking like, man, I'm so smart doing this in April. I figured it all out. I was feeling pretty dumb going through the Devil's Path and not having like any good footsteps anywhere in a section that's like probably the crux of the course to begin with.
Yeah. I mean, that is insanity on Devil's Path on a good day. And
Yeah.
then add in ice, it gets kind of wild. I know in your race recap for the FKT or your FKT recap, you talked about quote an impressive slip and fall on Slide Mountain. I know this is a big part of the FKT. Let's fill us in what happened out there on Slide.
Yeah. So Slide Mountain is the highest point in the Catskills. It's 4,100 feet or give or take. Um, so it hung on to a lot of snow and ice, and it must be pretty well trafficked. It was all packed down into a sheet of ice, basically. So I was with Jess Simeo, who was pacing me through that section, and we had put on our spikes a few times going up to Slide because you hit Wittenberg and then Cornell, which are both high peaks, both covered in ice. So we had to put them on for the last approach to Slide. And then the summit was really icy, and then we started descending, and I saw a patch of rock. And this is like 3 a.m. or something. So in my
Yeah.
sleep deprived brain, I'm like, oh, we've hit the section where we're not gonna, like, it's just rock from here on out. I better take off my spikes. And I said out loud, I'm gonna be bold and take off my spikes. And Jess said something like, well, I'm gonna be cautious and leave mine on. And I was like, well, okay. and, and I literally went 1 step, 2 steps, 3, and with that third step, my left foot shot in front of me. My right knee went straight down onto a
Oh,
patch of solid ice, and I still have a pretty good sized egg on my knee from that a month
do
later
you
now.
really?
Yeah, it hurts to kneel. I'm pretty sure I bruised like the top of my tibia or something. It
Oh
didn't.
my God.
Yeah, it's not like it hasn't taken me out of commission. It's just one of those nagging things. But at the time, part of me was like, okay, cool. Maybe I broke my leg or something, and I can just be done with this because I was feeling so dumb about it.
That's when you know it's bad when you
Yeah,
start having those thoughts.
yeah. I was actually a little bit disappointed when I stood up and started walking, and I was like, ah, God, okay, it feels kind of good. Let's keep going, I guess. And I did put on my spikes because I'm pretty stupid, but I'm not that stupid.
Was
Uh,
that I know when the FKT when it ended and we were all together walking back, which we'll get to the end. But you had mentioned there were some low moments out there. I'm wondering, was that Slide where that was the real low moment?
That was, yeah, that might be the worst it got because once when I cracked my knee on the ice, I actually did have to just pull off the trail and sit on a log and scream into the wilderness for a couple minutes.
Yeah.
Um, and when I say into the wilderness, it was basically into Jess's face, but it was directed at the wilderness. She was a good sport. She was laughing in a supportive way and
Yes.
resisted the urge to take a video of me, which in retrospect I kind of feel like it would have been fun to have.
She did take a nice picture of you though. That is, I think we should get it framed where you're
Yeah,
just kind of rolling around on the ground and
there was a dirt nap shortly before that, so I was fading. I alluded to this earlier. Emily, so we drove up there the night before, and with our daughter Emily, she was about a year and a half, still is basically, because it was only a month ago.
Yeah.
And she can sometimes have trouble sleeping in new places. So she didn't sleep the entire night that we were there. And it was a 3 a.m. wake up, I think, or a 4 a.m. wake up.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. So she didn't sleep. So we didn't sleep. So I went into this severely sleep deprived. So basically, as soon as sunset, no matter how much caffeine I had, my brain was just like, you need sleep right now, and you're going to do it whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
So that was maybe the beginning of the low point, was just fighting the sleep monster as soon as the sun set.
And you had also, I think I remember you saying you didn't really sleep great the week leading up to it as well, right?
Yeah, there was, I forget, Emily was teething or something like
Yeah,
that. And yeah, she knows when I have these big things coming up, and she wants me to really think about what I'm doing when I leave her for a day.
of course. Well, speaking of Emily, and you mentioned Jess, you had a rock star
Yes.
crew and pacers. So, including your wife Alex, who I know is
Yes.
off screen there, and your daughter Emily was a part of the crew.
Yeah, so
Um,
those two drove me to the trailhead to start the race, and despite Emily's grumpiness, she was thrilled to just be hanging out in the car on the drive there, and I got a nice hug and a kiss from her before I started. So
yes.
um, yeah, so I had them at the start. I had you, 12 miles in or something at Dutcher's Notch.
Yeah.
Sarah Kool-Aid made a heroic effort at North South Lake because we thought that was going to be a drive-in aid station, but it turns out the gate to the entire lake was closed. So she had to run in with an armful of my supplies and just made it to the intersection with the trail as I arrived. And then you were there at a few other aid stations. We had Jess Simeo come out
Yep.
overnight. Am I missing anyone else during the day? Yeah, and then speaking of heroic efforts, Melinda Cohen, another badass New Jersey runner,
Yep.
drove. I think she said she got up at 1 a.m. so
Oh,
that she could drive up to the Denning Trailhead in the middle of the night, and so she relieved Jess overnight. And I'm sure Jess was fried because she was with me through the absolute worst parts of this. So they they traded me off, and Melinda actually got to do her first two high peaks, going up and over Table and Peekamoose, and then passed me back off to Jess. And who else? You met up with us again, and Jay Lemos, former New
yes.
Jersey runner, now New York runner. We still claim him.
Yes.
You guys all paced me into the finish. It was a real party to the finish line, which was really cool.
Well, I would love to selfishly talk about the moment where I saw you. You were coming off of, I don't know, it was some little hill in that last section, and that was really such an amazing, like one of the greatest moments of my life, full circle moment where you were so trashed. And you've been there for some of my trashings, and you
It seems
always,
only fair.
yeah, you're always there with a nice smile, toxic
I was
positivity.
waiting for you to say that.
Uh-huh, uh-huh. So I was so thrilled to have the opportunity to dish it back to you.
Yeah, I guess I needed to pay my penance for reading 101 dad jokes to you
Oh, Ryan,
when you were maybe at your lowest point on your
that
long path FKT.
that was rough. That was rough. They
I
were
thought I
really,
was doing you a favor.
they were really bad.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, so you got to get your shots in while you can. I'm sure.
I had to. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I made sure to say things like, keep smiling. You're almost there. Let's do some box breathing.
Yeah. Yep. Got to do the box breathing.
So
And
good.
you did get a really great shot of me in agony, and you're
Oh
giving
yeah.
the camera the double thumbs up, which
Oh,
I
it was so
appreciate.
great. It was so great. Well,
Full circle time zone.
do you have any other like funny, memorable stories you want to share? I mean, I'm sure there's a bunch, but any that come to your mind off the top?
Um, well, seeing Jay was a total surprise. I had gotten in touch with him weeks prior. He was actually the first person to respond when I sent out a mass email saying, I need help.
Yeah.
And he was like, absolutely, that sounds so fun. I'm going to be there for you. And then didn't hear anything for a while. And I texted him maybe a week out. And he was like, oh, it's that weekend? Oh, I'm supposed to go skiing in New Hampshire. Sorry, dude. So the whole time in the back of my head, I'm like, Jay, come on, man. And I had all the other pacers and crew figured out. So I was like, fine, I'll soldier on without him.
Mm-hmm.
So he, I guess New Hampshire had some bad weather, and he decided to, he actually parked at the finish and ran something like 12 miles backwards
Yeah.
to find me, and then ran the last 12 miles with me. And so he ran into me partway up Pikamoose Mountain, and I'm severely sleep deprived. The sun is just barely coming up, and all of a sudden I see this like, vaguely familiar face, but I'm like, no, I'm pretty sure that's not him.
Yeah.
Lo and behold, it's Jay Lemos, and I was like, hey, hi, what are you doing out here? He's like, oh, yeah, I'm just going for a hike. And I kind of knew that wasn't true, but I also like was having trouble making sense of reality. So I was like, oh, all right, well, have fun, dude. And he's like, no, I'm here for you, idiot. That was fun.
That was cool. That was very, very special to see you guys reunite on trail.
Yeah, it was a lot of my favorite people that all came together for this event. So just the overall experience of having so many close friends and family there was really fun.
Yeah, I'm curious. Why don't we talk about the ending first, and then we'll get into some maybe deeper questions. So, like you mentioned before, you decide to extend the route to make it officially blue line to blue line. So, talk about that last section and what it was like. Getting to the what was the official end, which was Pikamoose, and then deciding
Mm-hmm.
to add on some bonus miles. Walk us through that.
Yeah. So the existing route on fastestknowntime.com skipped the northernmost mile and the southernmost 10 miles. So it hits all the high peaks. It does like the highlights of the long path through Catskill Park. But I was like, you're really doing the long path through Catskill Park if you don't do boundary to boundary. That's the way my brain works anyway.
Totally. Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons why it took me so long to finish this was because I was competing with an existing FKT. To be recognized by fastest known time, I had to beat the FKT, but ideally I wanted to beat it while adding all that additional mileage.
Yeah.
So that I could say, now that I've done it the fastest, here's what I think the real route should be. So the first time I tried this, I got to Pikamoose Road, which is the official end, but I only had an hour or something left to do the last 10 miles. And I knew I wasn't going to do that, especially on my trashed feet. And then same with the second attempt. I got to a certain point where like I'm so far behind the splits that I need to hit that it's not gonna be an FKT.
Yeah.
So this year, all right, I guess your question was why did I add, what's the last section like?
Yeah. So this year you got to Pikamoose, you beat the time, and then
Yeah. So I did beat the old FKT time to Pikamoose. It ended up being that the additional mileage took me over that previous time. But yeah, the last 10 miles, I don't think I ever want to do that section again unless it's like, if you want to do this and I'm only pacing you for that 10 miles, but I don't really want to tack it on to the end of a 90-mile run ever again.
It's rough, man.
So, after you trash your quads and your feet in the wet weather and you smash your knee on ice or whatever it is you happen to do in anyone else's FKT attempt on this, you're greeted with, what is it, Bangle Hill?
Bangle Hill.
Bangle Hill. I have a lot more colorful names for that, so that I won't repeat from this podcast to keep it family friendly.
You and me both.
Bangle Hill, the Strava segment is listed at something like 0.9 miles with 1,200 feet of elevation gain.
Yes.
Something along those lines.
Yep.
And it's not the fun, like Plateau Mountain is also pretty much those stats, but you're also kind of scrambling up rocks and you've got moss and you've got these beautiful trees and it's really cool. Bangle Hill is like someone just clear cut
Yeah.
a straight line up a stupid hill with no view. The whole area was like they did a controlled burn or something, so there isn't even like much plant life going up the hill.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get to the top, and on the elevation profile, it looks like, ooh, nice flowy single track for the next 9 miles to the finish, but it's all overgrown. I don't think anyone ever goes up there for good reason. So it's just leafy and rocky, and there are plants all over the place, and it's just not at all a fun experience until you hit. There's a couple of sections of like Fire Road or something like that
Yeah.
closer to the end. But I had it in my mind that it was like just get to the top of Bangle Hill. I'd never done it before, and then you just cruise on in. And I had this vision of me like pulling off one of those miracle sprint finishes where you're just hammering 7-minute miles, and yeah, that did not happen.
You had a little bit of the ultra shuffle going on.
It was definitely the ultra shuffle, and I should thank you again because you offered me the poles that you brought with you.
Yes.
I chose not to use poles for this route because there's so much scrambling that they just kind of get in the way of your hands pawing at the rocks in front of you. But very nice to have poles on that final rocky, leafy section.
Yeah. It's kind of like, yeah, you described it really well. It's a somewhat established trail, but it's not really flowy at all.
Yeah, it's also probably because I did it early in the season and there hasn't
Yeah.
been maintenance and foot traffic to clear out the leaves. It just kind of looked like someone stuck blazes on trees in a random patch of woods.
Yes. That's super accurate. Um, okay, so then you spill out into the Cherrytown trailhead, right?
Yeah,
And then you decide to do the most ultra ultra runner thing known to man.
yeah. So a smarter person or one that likes routes with aesthetics, I guess, would probably stop it at the trailhead. But the trailhead after that trailhead, there's technically a mile and a half of road that's
Mm-hmm.
still in Catskill Park. And again, this is back in my planning phase. I was like, it's road. It looks like it trends downhill. I'm just going to blast through that thing, not even going to pay attention to it. I'm not going to feel it. It's going to be like nothing after all that technical stuff. But yeah, it ended up being like 80 degrees out and
Oh,
sunny. And um, I mean, we still had the whole party group together. So vibes were still good. But it was not the sprint to the finish that I kind of expected. Thankfully, we did have so Jay had parked at that trailhead, got in his van, and drove alongside us. And he's like, "You guys want a seltzer?" And he pulls out some like lemon lime fizzy thing out
yeah,
of his cooler
that
and
was good.
was crewing us while on the move. So that was pretty cool.
I feel like that and a half was pretty much all uphill. That's what it seemed like. We were just going
Yeah,
up.
I went back and looked after the fact at Strava, and it still looks like it's all downhill in the last mile that I did.
Lies,
But
lies.
no part of that felt like it was downhill.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if there's something wrong with like Earth's gravitational pull in that part of the Catskills, but something felt very wrong.
So
It
how did you know where the finish line was?
was so I went to Caltopo ahead of time and I placed a dot on the map at the edge of Catskill Park
Yeah.
and I loaded the GPX onto my watch and I was staring at a dot on my watch get closer for the last half mile of the run, going, all right, it's around here somewhere. And thankfully, I had some crew that staked out the spot ahead of time. So they were like, it's that telephone pole up there. So that was my finish line. It was a telephone pole.
Yes.
So very classic ultra runner. Like you just end where you end, and there are three
Mhm.
people doing a golf
Yes.
clap. Like, yay! Can we go home now?
What was that? What was that like? What were you feeling when you finished? Do you remember what you felt?
I remember telling everyone that I was just over it.
Yeah.
But I've had some time to look back, and there are some nice pictures and video. And Alex picked up Emily and was running with her in her arms for the last tenth of a
Yeah.
mile or something. So the memories of it are really special, even if the part of my brain that appreciates things was turned off at the time.
Yeah.
All that was left was like the lizard brain saying, "Stop running and sit in the chair."
And take your shoes and socks off. I remember you and Jess were both like, your feet were killing you. That's what I remember
Yeah,
at the end.
I'm still losing skin on my feet
Yeah.
to this day.
Ugh.
Yeah, it turns out that one of the many downsides of all the snow that we went through was that there was just mud and water everywhere, especially going over Slide Cornell and Wittenberg. So, despite my best efforts, and despite the fact that I rarely have foot problems, I once again finished with absolutely destroyed feet.
Yeah. Hamburger meat.
Yeah,
Ugh. There's nothing like that trench foot feeling. It's so painful.
yeah, not my favorite thing.
Yeah.
I feel like
Um,
I've been a downer about the whole route. I should say it's a really gorgeous route. You hit so many high peaks. You go through these pine forests, and even on it was a day where you could see pretty far when you got to the vistas. But even on the days where you're completely fogged in, you're going through these like dark ancient pine forests,
yeah.
and I don't want to make it sound like I wasn't enjoying any of it, because the Catskills really are a special place, and I do think if your listeners haven't been there, they should definitely check them out. I don't recommend starting with a 90-mile route, but like check out a High Peak, especially now
That's
that all the snow
nice.
is officially gone.
That is very good advice. Yeah, it's so true. I mean, there's just so many. The Catskills have such a big personality. I feel like each
Yeah,
even within those 90 miles, like each section has its own kind of flair to it.
absolutely.
Do you have a favorite spot on the whole thing? Was it
Yeah,
Plateau that you mentioned, or is
I
it
do.
another
I
spot?
do really like Plateau, although Plateau is often in the Manitou's Revenge race. Plateau is like the last really steep climb, so it's often like where you're really struggling. So
Yeah.
there's a part of me that always associates that section with pain. Um, I think my absolute favorite part is the first real scramble that you get on the Devil's Path when you're going up Indian Head, and it's this really technical, like holding on to roots hand over hand and doing these weird rock climbing moves that are not at all related to running.
Yes.
Um, I remember the first time I did that years ago. It was a week before my first ever Manitou's Revenge, first time I'd ever seen the Catskills, and I did that. I was like, "Oh my god, is this what the Catskills are like?" And they're not all like that, but that section just always has a special place in my heart.
That is such an awesome. It's such an iconic spot, and it's hard to
Yeah,
describe it to people if you haven't seen it. Even the pictures, you're like, "What is that?" And then when
yeah,
you get there, it's such. I I always love the moment where you're at the ledge below it and just looking up, and you can see the red blaze, so you know,
hmm
like, oh, that's how you have to go. But how do you do that?
yeah. It's a section where if you don't know what's coming, you kind of think that the trail has ended.
Yeah,
Except then you look straight up, and like you said, there's a blaze above you, and you go, "Oh, I guess that's what a trail is in the Catskills."
it kind
Um,
of has a similar flavor to like the Cornell Crack. You know,
yeah,
when you're looking
very
up, like,
similar.
is that a trail? What is that?
Yeah, yeah, I love all that stuff. The
Uh,
In my
Ryan,
mind, the ideal route is one that has as little running as possible. So all that really technical stuff
I'm with
is
you. Running is
yeah,
dumb.
yeah.
Running is dumb.
That's why I walked as much of this as possible.
Oh, that's not true. You ran a lot of it.
I did do a decent
You
amount of
did.
running.
You did. Um, I'm curious. Do you like thinking back to the moments where it was a little bit tougher than when you're feeling pretty sky high? Those moments where you're starting to dip down a little bit. What was it that like? Do you have something that helps you turn it around, like a mantra, or relying on pacers, or digging deep, or what, like, or nothing? What's that like for you?
Yeah. So I really wanted to have pacers overnight for that reason, because I do struggle when the sun sets. I think I'm like very visually motivated. Um, like I love all the little vistas that you get, even just the little peeks through the trees where you can see out into the mountains, um, and the pine forest that I talk about. So having when it gets dark, I need like music or a pacer to talk to or someone to just keep me from going total zombie mode and shutting my brain down. So having Jess and Melinda there, two people who I've shared a lot of miles with in the past, for the overnight sections, was really, really crucial. I specifically asked Jess to come out for the section from Phoenicia to Denning Road because I knew that it's just a total ass kicker of a section,
Yeah.
and I needed moral support. And then a big motivation is always knowing when I'll get to see Alex and Emily.
Yeah.
And Emily, she still doesn't know what I'm doing out there. She just knows that we're sort of in the woods.
Mm-hmm.
But she's old enough now that she gets excited when she sees her dad. So that getting into that very last trailhead, a mile and a half from the finish, she came running up to me and smiling and was just so happy to see Daddy. So stuff like that really motivates me to slog through those miles. Like, the faster I do this, the faster I get to see my family.
Totally. I love those moments just being on the sideline, especially that last trailhead, like you talked about, like embracing Emily and Alex. It was for sure a special moment. I think
Yeah.
Jess got a really nice picture of you and Emily hugging, which was cool.
Yeah, I love those pictures.
Um, okay. I do love to ask towards the end of this for, SAS Squad, we have a lot of newbies that come in to the trail world. And I'm just wondering, like, what would you say to a trail newbie who might be interested in going out and we're not going to say doing the Catskills 100, but we'll say like attempting their first kind of run venture on
Yeah,
their own. Like, can you think back to when you first started running and maybe give those people some advice to start run venturing?
sure. Yeah, I don't know. I have to think a little bit about that. When I first started running, there weren't a lot of resources for runners. So I came into it with sort of a hiking background. So I would go running with like a metal canteen and like a nature valley bar.
Did you really?
Yeah, yeah. Um, I didn't know that there were like handhelds or vests or anything like. I mean, vests were just sort of starting to come onto the market, I think.
Yeah.
I had been running for probably a year or two when Ultimate Direction released their first vest, I think. Um, so I don't know. To a certain extent, you do just have to put yourself out there and sign up for a race or go find a trail that you are interested in, and do a little bit of research so you're not going in totally blind. But you do kind of have to make that leap of faith. And now there are resources, so you can look up like what people do for hydration and nutrition and stuff like that. But if you start with a short enough event, you don't really have to worry too much about that stuff. Just pack some snacks that you're going to want to eat, pack a bottle or two of water, and go hit the trails and try out all sorts of different trails and see what you like. It's a really individual sport, so I guess it's hard to have specific advice, but I think there's something for everyone in the sport of trail and ultra running.
Totally. I love that about the trail and ultra community is also like the wide array of personalities that make their way into it.
Yeah,
We are a weird bunch of people in the
yeah,
trail and ultra community.
yeah. It
So,
really is all ages, all shapes and sizes. I've been beaten at races by people half my age and twice my age,
yes,
which can be demoralizing, but I think it's really cool too.
I love that. I
Yeah.
love that. All right, let's ask one more question about some advice giving. Hypothetically, if someone were eyeing up this route, what kind of advice would you give them?
Do it in dry weather if you can.
I feel like that's the answer for like every FKT. Is like,
Yeah, that's kind of a non-answer because like how
yeah,
many people have the luxury of waiting until the absolute perfect weather window? We're all humans with other responsibilities.
totally.
Um, I mean, every season has its pluses and its minuses. Gosh, I don't know. Find some people to come support you, unless you do really enjoy being out there solo. But as I've attempted this more and more, I've invited more and more people to come out and help. And it does help to have a community of people rallying around you
Yeah.
on something that's this long and this tough.
It's also so fun for crew and pacers. Like that was so much fun to zip up there and help the one day. I mean, I had so much fun. I came back the next day. I wasn't planning on it,
Yeah,
but
that was really
oh,
cool.
I got to get back up there and you know, yeah, it's a lot of fun to get your friends involved with like
Yeah,
and it's just such a shared experience, you know.
yeah, yeah. I love sharing this kind of stuff with my friends, with my family. It just makes the experience that much more special. And and sometimes you don't remember things that happened, and they can remind you later, like, "Hey, remember when you banged your knee on that rock and had to sit and yell into the forest for a few minutes?" And
It's so true.
it's fun to reminisce on these things after the fact. It's not for me. It's not the same if I take pictures when I run, but looking through pictures that I took isn't the same as talking to people about things that happened afterwards.
Absolutely. And there's a fun element of the crew and pacing is like you and I would say like we don't know each other really really well, but we have shared some like crazy times on the trails and
Yeah,
that has made such an awesome friendship. I mean, you and Alex and Emily. Emily and I go way back. She was there crewing the long path.
yeah, true.
But it is cool like to share those miles with people and the community that just kind of organically evolves through stuff like this.
Yeah, it's amazing how well you get to know someone running with them for just a few miles sometimes
Yes.
of a race, especially when it's an ultra, because ultras tend to strip away all the we put up these guards in our everyday conversation, but in an ultra those kind of melt away, and
Mhm.
you end up talking about some really deep things sometimes when you're on the trail with someone. So you can develop really strong bonds with people with
Totally.
just a few miles or a few hours of running together.
Yes, totally. I was just peeking over because there's a question that popped up over here. I'm going to ask one more question before I put this one. Are you doing this? You're going to do the winter Catskill 100? That's what I heard.
I'm going to need to know who your source is on that bit of trivia.
Could you imagine? Oh my
You
God.
know, part of me thought, because I hate running in hot weather. That was the
Yeah.
main motivator for doing this in April. I just absolutely melt when it's hot and humid. And part of me was like, what if I went out there in like December when it's really cold, but there aren't feet of snow on the ground. But you still get like enough freeze thaw cycles that you're going to be going through some pretty icy stuff. So
Yeah. It's that's very true.
to take a page out of your book, I'll say never, but it's not something that's currently on my radar.
I love that answer. Never say never.
Yeah. I've said never to a bunch of things. I said never to this several times, and then I ended up doing it. So
And here you are.
yeah,
Well, we got a question that came in from Kumi Redpath, who we both know.
yeah.
Uh,
Hey,
I have a
Chloe.
I have a question. How long did you sleep, including dirt naps?
So I'm a big fan of the 5 minute nap. Um, in in this particular case, that was 5 minutes of me laying on the ground uncomfortably, wishing that I could fall asleep, and then shivering myself awake because it was pretty cold overnight. Um, but 5 minutes, if I can get just a little bit of sleep, it's enough to kind of trick my brain into thinking like, oh, I had a nap. I don't know how long it was.
Yeah,
Um, and it can kind of like reset your mind a little bit. Um, for me, it's not about recuperating on sleep because you're not really going to do that with any length of nap unless you're doing multiple hours on the trail. It's just about like getting to turn my brain off for a few seconds.
yeah,
Like when your computer's acting up, you just turn it off and you turn it back on again.
totally.
And sometimes 5 minutes of not thinking about where I'm placing my feet is enough to flip my mindset.
Absolutely. All right, we got another question here, or I guess a comment from Sarah Kool-Aid. I heard he's going for the full long path.
I feel like there's a lot of fake news that's going around about me these days.
Fake news. We're gonna have to fact check that.
I do remember saying to you asked me the same question
I
a
did.
mile from the finish line of this, and I
I
said,
did.
no, I'm never doing it because this is my favorite section of the long path, and I hate it now. And that's not entirely true. That was the tired ultra runner talking. I still do love that section of the long path, but I don't know how you or anyone else does the full 350 something miles of the long path with that horrendously difficult 90-mile section stuck right in the middle of it. It's something
It's
that I can't wrap my head around.
Well, you've already done now most of the long path if you think about it, because you were
Oh,
there. You were up in the northern section, so you got to see a lot of it, and you did.
yeah.
I mean, you did a bunch of miles. It was probably what 40, 50 miles, 60, 70. I don't know how
I
much you
forget.
did.
I tallied it up at one point, but I forget, like 70-ish, something like
Yeah, 70.
that. And that didn't include anything in Catskill Park. So I've done probably close to 200 miles of it when you include all the other various runs and hikes I've done. But yeah, I don't know. Again, never say never.
Never say never.
Right now, I don't have any plans of putting the whole thing together. It was really cool to be a part of your long path run, and for now, that has fulfilled my need to see the long path.
Well, I forgot to mention, in your honor, I'm drinking nettle tea right now. As we,
Is this your subtle way of getting revenge on the Nettles?
yes,
Like,
I'm
not so
trying
tough now.
I'm trying to also gain immunity for Manitou's revenge this year. I don't think it works like that, but
If it does, let me know because that sounds amazing.
wishful thinking.
Hmm.
All right, we got another question here from Harry. Wants to know, after the skin stops peeling off your feet, are there any more FKTs rattling around in the back of your head? Great question.
Yeah, there's always ideas rattling around. Yeah, I feel comfortable saying it. I'm not officially going for anything, but
Okay.
the top of my list right now is setting the record for the most Adirondack high peaks in 24 hours. I don't know.
Wow.
I don't know when I'll have the time to do something like that.
Okay.
I was thinking maybe last summer, but again, it was one of those really rainy summers, and I wanted good conditions for it. The Adirondacks are pretty rugged too, and I didn't want to be slipping and sliding on the slabs there. But yeah, the record right now is 24 high peaks in 24 hours. And looking at maps, I figured out a few areas where you could add in one. I don't think I could break it by more than one. I don't know if I could break it to begin with, but I love the Adirondacks too, so I'd like to give that a shot at some point.
Wow. There's got to be a lot of strategery involved in that.
Yeah. Well, thankfully the person there are two people that jointly hold the record for
Okay.
24 peaks, and one of them posted his route, which is really helpful for planning.
Okay.
Um, because the one of the big logistical things is just how do you connect the peaks because there are infinitely
Totally.
ways to connect them. So if I do it, whenever that might be, it's going to be a modified version of the route that already exists. It's up on fastestknowntime.com. Submitted it as an official route. It's got a lot of history behind it. Like Bob Marshall was the
Oh
guy
yeah.
who held the record for a while. So something that's I think personally meaningful to me, and also just a really fun challenge. So we'll see.
Oh my goodness. The Adirondacks are so gnarly and so
Yeah,
beautiful and so big. Like so big.
yeah, and remote.
Yes. Remote. Yeah. Those types of FKTs are so impressive to me. Like, the ones that are like all of the Adirondack high peaks, like just the strategy and the logistics behind that, like the
Hmm.
planning involved is monumental for those types. I mean,
Yeah,
for all FKTs, but a style like that is you can't wing it for sure. You definitely can't wing something like that.
yeah. I have a lot of respect for the people that do like all the high peaks in a range, like all the Catskill high peaks, all the Adirondacks, or you get the people that do like the New England 100 highest, and
Yeah,
that's the logistics behind that are so much above and beyond something like me doing 90 miles of the long path, where it's a set route and like I know where the road crossings are going to be. It's just like how fast can I do it?
right.
That's just a whole different level.
It really is. Well, I'm glad you have some ideas rolling around your head. You got
There's
mine here,
always
so
more.
You know I'm in for any type of support that you need. I will be there ready to take selfies when you are trashed.
I'm going to wait for the next big snowstorm and then I'll send out an email and say, let's do it.
Oh, you know what? I'm going to be busy that weekend. I am not. I'm not into the snow, but I'll take the nettles over snow. I think.
Oof. Oh, hard pass. I'll take the snow any day.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm. I better keep drinking my nettle tea. Huh?
If it works, I'm going up and harvesting nettles this summer.
Seriously. All right, Ryan. Well, this has been fantastic.
This was great.
Thank you so much for sharing all these stories with us tonight.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It was a lot of fun to talk about this.
Yes, very cool. Well, thank you all for tuning in, whether you watched live tonight or you're catching the replay or listening to the podcast. We appreciate you tuning in. And again, if you want to learn more about us, SasquatchTrailRunning.com. We've got races all throughout the year and all other fun activities going on. So, again, Ryan, thank you.
Thanks, Kim.
All right. Until we see you again, keep it squatchy.